Hello, this is Blaine Gray from Plastering for Beginners. In this video we're going to talk all about prepping walls. It's a big tutorial. We're going to talk about PVA, which backing plasters to use, what backgrounds we're working on. They're preparing walls, stuff you can't get away with in plastering, and we're just going to go through the full lot, so definitely give it a watch all the way through. And I'm starting off, it's basically a little bathroom. There's been loads of tiles on the wall. And I've just try and get your best to make the wall flat from the beginning. So I'm just trying to get the last bit of the tile adhesive off there, just using a hammer and bolster. And there'd probably some people saying, why you're not just using an SDS or a Kango. I just find it probably do more damage than it's worth. I just want to get a thin layer off. Sometimes if you've got an SDS, you just end up taking all your wall apart, getting back to brick. I just want to get that layer off and deal with the tile adhesive. Just get that off so it's easier when it comes to the backing coats. So as you can see, just chipping away. It does take a bit more time, don't get me wrong, but I think in the long run it's a lot better than doing the damage you might do with a chisel bit on an SDS. It can be a bit naughty, can't it? So that's that. Just try and get your residue off the wall. And then what I always do, as you can see, there's a lot of render on the wall, a lot of exposed render. I'm just going to PVA it before I pack it out with some undercoat plaster. If you don't, you might find that the undercoat plaster might crack. It might give away, and I think it weakens the whole strength of it. So if you give it a tight coat of PVA, I've got a 3-to-1 mix, 3 parts water to 1 part PVA, so it's quite a strong mix. Just soak your walls down. It won't take long for it to dry either. The backing render is so porous on these walls that by the time you put it on and mix your bonding, you'll be ready to start skimming it over. So don't be shy, just throw loads on it, because you don't want your undercoat plaster to crack. If you don't prep it like this, it will crack and it will weaken it as a product. So just give it a nice lashing of PVA and get everywhere. Just deal with all of it. Even if you're not going to bond it out, just PVA it anyway. Because we are going to be doing this later, further down the line before we start plastering, so it doesn't even matter. I just PVA the whole area. So that's that. And now I'm just going to quickly check the walls. As you can see in the middle, there's a big edging of bonding. This used to be 2 rooms, and I'll show you now the problem that causes. If you look down along the straight edge, you'll see there's a gap and it's tailoring right out. You see it's quite deep. I mean, if that runs to the end of the room, we could be talking 15mm. So unfortunately we won't be able to make this wall completely flat, and that's the nature of working with old properties. Unfortunately, you're not always going to win all the battles. So what we're going to have to do is bond the walls out to the left side. I'm packing the walls out, and this is what I'm using. This is Thistle Bonding Coat by British Gypsum. It's an unbelievable product. You can use it on plasterboard, masonry backgrounds, use it for covering in chasings. It is an amazing product, and I'm going to quickly show you how to mix it. I have got a separate video on mixing plaster, but for the purposes of this video, I'll quickly show you. I've got some water at the bottom. Literally I don't pour loads in. I mean, I've got about half a bag. I'll put half a bag in right now. So it's always the water first, never the other way around. It's just easier to mix, otherwise all the plaster will stick to the bottom of your bucket. Give it a decent mix with your mixer. I've got a Raffina tub here. They're quite good actually. They're hard wearing. I knock everything up in them. I did have some colour mix buckets, and to be honest, they were shocking. I had 2 of them and they both split within 1 week. I moved to Raffina tubs, and I must admit they are brilliant. They do last. So that's definitely something you can think about. But in terms of the mix, just adding the last bit of water in, and you don't want your bonding to be too wet. You want it to be quite thick, and just in case when you need to pack out some areas where there isn't a lot of where there is a bit where you need building out, you need to make sure your bonding is mixed to a nice thick consistency. If it's too wet, it'll just be a nightmare to work with. It's not worth it. I like it quite nice and thick. I'll show you now anyway. I'm going to put a scoop up on my bucket trial so you can see how I like it at least. So this is it. Nice, thick consistency. Sits on the bucket trowel well. When you pick it up, it's got a lot of substance to it. It just sits high. It doesn't fall back on itself. You can make a little mountain out of it. But as you can see, when I'm packing it out, I'm in Hawk now. So you can put a lot on. It takes it and it doesn't slop down. Because it's such a lightweight product, it's ideal for packing out. I mean, you can build this to about 12-15 mil sometimes bonding. I think you can build it a lot more than traditional render, just because of what it's made of. And as it works, I love this product. It is brilliant. Just for anything where you're just building out plasterboard or filling in back boxes, or working where the electricians have done their bit. It's just the ideal product, and it does stick to anything. Literally, like, you be careful with your buckets. Don't leave it in there too long because it'll just stick to it. It is a brilliant product, and it's a great little thing that British Gypsum have got onto there, and it's ideal for situations like this. Because the other thing, it doesn't shrink back as much as hardwall either, so it tends not to crack as much. So when it comes to your final stages where you're finishing on it, you don't have to worry that it's going to move too much. It's got it allows for quite a lot of movement within the building, which is good. So yeah, all I'm doing now is just putting a tight coat on. I'm not going too hard. I'm literally just trying to meet up where the places where there's a bottom left where I couldn't quite get that bit of render off. I'm just meeting to that. So a nice tight coat on the masonry on the old render. I find you could probably skim the old render. I just find it's so porous it'll just suck the life out of your plaster when you're doing it. So I like to put a tight coat of bonding on. It just makes plastering a bit easier to work with. I like plastering onto bonding. It's a nice product to work with, and it's not too porous either. It's definitely a lot more forgiving than British Gypsum hardwall. You use that stuff, no matter how much coats PVA you put on, you can expect to, be plastering in half amount of the time. Bonding gives you a lot more time to work with. It's a lot more forgiving. So what I'm doing now, like I showing you in that last clip, you could see where that wall really dived in. I'm not going to be able to pack it out. I'm not going to be able to make it square. But what I will do is I'm putting thickness between where the old wall to the right starts and where the new one on the left begins. And basically I'm just going to try and just feather it in. So I'm putting a thickness on to the right side. I'm just putting it on into this where I start slapping it on. I'll get the bonding. And don't be shy at this point. When you are feathering in, or when you are building up, and with the aim of ruling it off, which I'll show you in a minute, just throw it on. Don't try and get it flat with your trowel. As you can see here, I'm just throwing the bonding on. I'm just getting it in. I'm just making sure that, when it comes to me ruling it off, I've got enough render on there to work with. So really pack it out. Don't be worried about it. The straight edge is going to do all the work. And to be honest, I usually use a feather edge when I'm ruling off, but I've actually left it on another rendering job for this video, so I'm using the old Speed Skim ST, which is still a great piece of kit. I just prefer the feather edges at these instances, but for this it works perfectly, to be fair. I was quite surprised how it dealt with it, to be honest. It dealt with it very well. As you see, it smooths the the bonding nice, it leaves a nice finish. So actually, it's not a bad piece of kit. I was pleasantly surprised, considering I wanted to use a feather edge, but like I said, start from the bottom, pulling up, and then any excess plaster you do have, scrape it back off again. And like we said, you're not going to get it perfectly flat with your hands and your trowel. You've got to use a straight edge to make sure that you're getting the best results. So pack it out, build your bonding out, build your render out, whatever you're using, and then use the straight edge to pull it off. That's how you get your walls extremely flat. And then what I've done is I've feathered it into a point, and I've put a tight coat of bonding on the rest of the wall. So that's how I've done that. So that bit's done, nice and ready. And then now we go on to some of the plastering no-goes. These are some of the rules you can't break. For example, someone's left the door liner in, built a frame within the door liner, and then plasterboarded it. You can't do that. Basically, you can't bond on top of timber, you can't plaster on top of timber. So what happens is that porous, it'll just suck the moisture from your plaster and just completely crack it all the way through. So the other option is you can EML on top of timber, which is basically a metal mesh. But this would have brought the thickness out too far up on the walls. So you can EML on top of timber and then bond it or render on top of that. otherwise what I've got to do is I've had to take the plasterboard off, and I've got to cut the frame back to where the internal frame is. So you've literally got to cut the inside of the liner out. So if you're doing any work around your house and you think keep liner in, it's a big no-go. Basically, you won't get away with it. Like I said, it'll look right for a few days and then it'll just completely crack everything you put on it. I did it when I was young, actually. One of the builders who was setting up one of the jobs left one reveal exposed, and it was just full of timber underneath. It's basically like it was an oak post, and I've naively thought you could have bonded it out, put a thickness on, and then plaster it. It was fine for about 3 days, and then it completely cracked it all the way down. So you won't get away with it unless you use EML. So what I'm doing here is I've had to cut out for the internal frame, and you know, it would have been easier at the beginning just to saw through the middle of the door frame, rip it out, and then build your stud. But because of this, I've had to do a lot more work than what's expected. So obviously if you don't know, you don't know, but I just thought I'd include this in the video to show that, you know, in terms of using and rendering or bonding, using any backing plaster into wood, you won't do it. It won't work. It'll just crack the product and it'll just ruin your plaster. So that was a bit of a no-go. That's, you know, one of them, a thing for you hopefully you could pick up and learn from. What I've done is just cut the frame back, and then what I will do is stick the plasterboard back on fresh from there. So I've got the old piece, stick it back onto the frame as you would normally, and then I've cut some slivers, and then I'll fill in the right side from there. So it's not a biggie, but you know, just so you know in the future, it's something you can't really aim towards doing. So that's it. Choose your impact driver, blow some screws in, job done, happy days. So that's one of the no-goes. And the other thing is, when you are working onto plasterboard, if it's an old piece of board, this plasterboard had been sitting there for about, I think it's been sitting there for a year. If that is the case and you've got old boards on the wall, old plasterboard that is, PVA them. Make sure you put a nice coat of PVA, drench it actually, it'll soak up, but if you don't, it'll just sap the moisture from your plaster. Old plasterboard just seems to be very porous when it comes to an age. So if it is an old piece, it's just been sitting around your garage or something, you do want to use it, just make sure you whack some PVA on it, just to cover your back really. So as you can see, I've just got my slivers going in. I'll whack this last piece in, and then the next thing we need to consider when we're working onto plasterboard is dealing with scrim tape. I will go into that in a minute. Just whacking this last piece in here, and just when you are plasterboarding, make sure you put plenty of screws in. Don't be stingy. Do it every foot at least. You just don't be stingy. It's not worth it. Then when you've put enough screws in your plasterboard, what you do then is put scrim tape on every joint you can see. Even the join between the plasterboard and the existing wall, definitely put some scrim tape on that, because the movement in the timber will pull away from the masonry brick, which is to the right. So make sure you put your scrim tape on the joins of the plasterboard and the join from the plasterboard to the existing wall as well. Basically anywhere there's a gap, scrim tape it. That's even if you've got cracks in your walls inside, and if it's an old house and you've got a few cracks running up and down the length of your wall, scrim tape it. Just don't take the risk. It's added protection. It is strong product, and for the sake of 5 minutes work, it's definitely worth doing. If you didn't do it, you'll just risk having more cracks on the finished product. So even if you've got cracks running on old walls, make sure you scrim tape it, and if it needs, use some bonding like we did before to pack out some of the old plaster and build it up. It's just not worth risking it otherwise. In terms of scrim tape, most of it I find is pretty similar. I mean, I've got some pink stuff here, but to be honest, each to their own. For the price of it, I do spend out and try and buy better scrim tape as it goes, just because it's not worth the hassle. If you get a real bad bit of scrim tape, it's not even worth using. It's horrible stuff, isn't it? We've all been there. So next bit now, we've built the frame. It's within the plasterboard, but as you can see, it's a bit behind, so we're going to have to pack it out. And again, we'll be using this trusty product, British Gypsum bonding. So again, the same thing, just make sure you pack it out, don't be shy. I just literally throw it on and I try and get it above the area where we're working from, so I put it on thicker than either side of the door frame, just so when I know when I'm reeling it off, I've got enough to play with. You don't want to keep putting it down, adding some, putting it down, adding some. Just makes your job hard. Just have it slightly thicker, and even if you have to rule it once and just get the high ridge off and back again, it's all good. So as you can see, I'm working towards a scrim tape as well, really pushing that tape in against the wall, and this just gives it an extra bit of strength as well. You're really pushing the bonding into the scrim tape and just reinforcing that as a product, which is ideal really. It just keeps the strength, and if there is any movement, at least you've got the bonding tied in with the scrim tape as well. So it should, in theory, work wonderfully. Whether it always works like that, I'm not sure, but I mean, if this is all we've got, then that's what I'm using. So yeah, that's it. Just put it on nice and tight, working to either side of the door frame, and then, like I said, as I said before, I usually use feather edge. Sorry about that. I usually use a feather edge, but the speed skim's working out alright, to be fair. Just pull it up, pull the excess render away, and there you go. See, I've put so much on that I've got quite a lot looming over. Just simply take it off your trowel, put it back on your hawk, job done. That's it. Put it to one side and then fill the rest of the section. And then we're just working with the rest of it, doing it the same way, pushing it in tight to the edges where the scrim tape is. And just really build up the area where you need it. And just throw loads of bonding on. Again, this is a great product to use because you're using a bonding which is designed to work on various different backgrounds. This is ideal. Don't use hardwall on bonding though. It doesn't react quite well. It pulls in way too fast, and it just isn't as good. It doesn't react as well to other backgrounds. Hardwall is, by saying that I mean British Gypsum hardwall, which is an undercoat plaster as well. That's just designed for masonry backgrounds, and it's just designed to be built out, and it's usually where you're not dot and dabbing and you're just basically doing it the old school way and using a backing coat to build your walls up. That's what hardwall is designed for, not for plasterboard. It's not really designed for filling in chased sections of back boxes and where the cable's been chased out. It's not its purpose. That is literally just designed to be used as a backing plaster. Bonding is a universal product and can be used for anything. So yeah, when it comes to hardwall and plasterboard, just don't go there. It's no point really. Stick to bonding. It's a better product for this purpose. So we've added bonding on nice and thick there. Same thing really. It's easy in this situation. You're working edge to edge. All you need to do is make sure that you're putting enough pressure on either side. So otherwise you might risk having it slightly higher than where you're ruling off from. Just make sure you're ruling off with enough pressure. And it's so easy this way. You're literally just using, as long as your straight edge is long enough, it's just basically using two platforms either side to just pull off, so you know your wall's going to be completely flat. And this is something you can do if you've got an area in a wall that's got a hollow in it, or there's an area where it dips in. Build it out with bonding. Use your straight edge to feather it out, and it's the exact same process. You literally just ruling your wall out, making sure it's completely flat, doing the same process what we're doing here. Don't overcomplicate it. It doesn't need it. Just literally, and then any areas where it needs a bit more bonding, I'm just taking it from my hawk, and then as you'll see on the picture, there's a few areas where there's a few drag marks, or there's a few stones which pulled on the bonding. Just fill it back in again, and use your trowel to trowel it back. It's not hard. It's not hard at all, and with enough practice, you'll master it. It's not a big thing really. Just make sure your walls are nice and flat where you can do it. Obviously before, where we had to feather it in, that's different, but there's no reason this section can't be completely flat. Now all I'm doing is I'm just working to the very edge, cleaning up the edges which have been pulled and been a bit neglected, filling in any areas where I need it, and just troweling it off. That's it. Job done. The final part, and last but not least, is using PVA. anywhere we've worked, all the walls, anything that's exposed, we've got to PVA it all. And don't leave anything behind. Basically, PVA stops the rate of suction, and if you don't do this, the plaster will just suck in way too fast and you'll have no time to finish, flatten and polish your plaster. So PVA basically reduces the rate of suction and just gives you more time with your plastering, which is ideal really and essential, I must say. So all you do, I'm just cutting back any excess bonding there. I'm just using the edge of my trowel, scraping down the wall, cutting back anything that doesn't need to be there. And now I've got a strong mix of PVA. Again, it's 3-to-1. Literally just drench everything, and don't be stingy on the bonding. It's very porous. It's a porous product, so make sure you really cover it with your PVA. Just soak it up. And any other walls that are exposed, and any other walls that you're going to plaster, make sure you give it a real good soaking, because at the end of the day you don't want to be caught out because you didn't put enough PVA on. So that's it basically. I'm just using a big old water brush. Again, it's 3-to-1, it's a mix, that's it. And even if you're not confident, if you're new to plastering and you're a bit unsure about it, make sure that you give it 2 coats of PVA just to make sure that you've got enough on there. Again, you don't want to get caught out. It's not worth it. So literally just cover the whole area. And whilst I'm at it, this is the last stage, but if you are getting to this stage, obviously prepared your walls for plastering. If you want to go further than that, you can visit our website. I've left a link below, and we have a welcome course for anyone who's new to plastering, anyone who's never really tried plastering a wall, or who has plastered before but you really want to master it. We've got a free course. It's an online based course where we've got lots of how-to videos, and we basically teach how to plaster. Most of the videos you won't find on YouTube, and it's all quite exclusive, and you'll get new tips, new tricks, and you'll get brand new information sent to your inbox. So that's at the link below. Simply visit the website, join Plastering for Beginners, and we'll get you started on that welcome course, which again is completely free. So if that sounds good, click the link, join Plastering for Beginners, and get involved. Since you've got this far in terms of preparing your walls, you might as well go ahead and get some skimming done for it. So that's it. Everything's done now. We've bonded it, we've prepped it, we've PVA'd it, we've tried to make it flat where we can, and we've sorted the plasterboard out. So that's it. Now your walls are ready for plastering. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did find it useful, please subscribe. Feel free to leave any comments, and yeah, we'll see you soon for another video. Thanks a lot. Blaine Gray, Plaster for Beginners. See you soon.